Blah.
Um, all right. I've saved two questions for the end, and I don't know. You may not want to answer either one of these, and I completely respect and understand if you do not. I just feel like I'd be so remiss not to at least ask. And the first one is about Gods of Egypt. And you know, I remember when Gods of Egypt came out, and I remember the controversy. And when I was getting ready for this interview, there was a detail that I was not aware of. You did say we started this interview, you mentioned your Greek background, but you did not mention your Egyptian background, which threw in, and here's again, we've been talking about nuance in a way. No, we haven't been talking about nuance, but we're about to talk about nuance in the sense of just like how things have changed, how people agree and disagree. It was very easy to agree on one thing. Now everybody, you know, that what basically everything you were saying before. And I remember thinking back to when that happened in 2016. And I remember it was in my, like, it was on my radar, something, it was this whole thing about like this notion of whitewashing and this, that, and the other. But one detail that was never, ever brought into the conversation, and I'm not here either which way to say anything, have any opinion on it. I am simply it was almost a glaring omission, I thought, in that whole conversation, dialogue, whatever you want to call it, is the fact that you are Egyptian and that you are making a movie called The Gods of Egypt, and whether you have white actors in your movie because they're more bankable or whatever the situation is. Why, how does that, something like that, get lost in the conversation, and why does that not, is there not a little more nuance and disturbing about, like, okay, here is an Egyptian director making a movie about Egyptian mythology. Does the Egyptian get a say in any of this public outrage?
That's a very complex question to answer in 12 minutes, but I'll do my best.
Whatever you feel comfortable saying.
There's a lot of stuff to unpack. I feel comfortable talking about it. It's just trying to get it all, in a soundbite version. Look, firstly, my heritage is I'm Greek Egyptian. My name is Greek. Proyas is a Greek name. Because my father's side of my mother was born in Cyprus. Her family was from Cyprus. Actually, no, sorry, my mother was born in Egypt, but her family was from Cyprus. My father's side, however, goes right back to, we don't know where, Ptolemy, Alexander, Cleopatra. It goes right back, right? Because the Greeks and the Egyptians coexisted very happily for centuries, right? Millennia, in fact. To the point where Cleopatra was, in fact, Macedonian and therefore Greek, and there's been a whole other debacle in the last few weeks about Cleopatra being cast in a particular way, which I won't go into for this. Right. It's been very interesting to watch. So that's where I sit. So Proyas is like Horus. Horus is a Greek. Horus is a Greek name. All the gods in the Gods of Egypt are Greek names for Egyptian gods because they were named at the time of the words that we use to describe those gods were named by the Greek culture. And, there is no delineation between Greek. You go back 2,000 years or more, 4,000 years, and there is no delineation between Greek and Egyptian culture. It was really the same thing, and Egyptians, modern day Egyptians who are not ancient Egyptians, who are most, substantially Arab, who basically, took over the rule of Egypt, in the Middle Ages, and the ancient Egyptians, they're still there, and they were all interbred because
Coptic Christians too, right? You have Coptic Christians.
That's the nature. Yeah, as were the Christians. Like my family were Christian, right? As every part of that part of the Middle East, Mediterranean, it's all interbred. No one cares. It's all part of the same world, and race was something that was not even considered as being important. We didn't view it in the divisive way that our modern culture is being forced into viewing it, right? So 2016, around that time when Trump was getting in and all that sort of stuff, this was the ground zero of this bizarre paradigm shift in American culture, specifically American culture, not so much in the rest of the world, where suddenly race became this thing. We were doing so well. I thought we were doing extremely well. I mean, I was aware of the shift between, the 1980s when I first started working in LA, where I actually said to people that I was working with in the production company, hey, why are there any black people working here? And they were like, they all got very embarrassed, to 2016 when, it was a much less divided culture and we were all moving in the right direction, fulfilling Martin Luther King's mantra of don't judge a man by the color of his skin, the content of his character. We were starting to, America was starting to embrace that concept. Suddenly, we took a sharp turn when race was the identity and race were the be all and end all. And, I was mere collateral. My film was mere collateral damage. So that when we saw this discourse starting to happen with Gods of Egypt, and it happened with Ridley Scott's film a couple of years earlier, Gods and Kings, I think it was called. Same thing, the way they dealt with it, the way Rupert Murdoch and Ridley Scott dealt with it when they were said when this Africo-centric concept of ancient Egypt was brought up for their film, and they cast white actors. Well, they weren't white; they were white actors. Their response was, "Well, we thought Egyptians were white," and that's kind of equally messed up. But look, what I wanted to do, the studio that made Gods of Egypt completely freaked out. My attitude was, let me go on, let me do media and say, hey, I'm Egyptian. Okay, here are the real reasons why there is a mixture of different ethnicities in the film. The simple pragmatic results, the simple pragmatic reasons of there ain't enough Egyptian actors, right? Even if we could find the Egyptian actors who looked exactly right in the context of ancient Egypt, that's not what the film is. The film is it's an inclusive of all cultures, because for me, that's just as justifiable a way to portray those people in that context of ancient Egypt and mythological. It's not even real.
It's mythological. It's not historical.
Mythology, right? So I went, if you watch the movie, you'll see that we eventually come out from the entire world and you realize that Ra is going around this planet that's Egypt on one side and the land of the dead on the other. It's a flat earth. And I'm like, that was my way of saying, guys, this is not real. This is a fantasy. This is like Star Wars. This is like the first Star Wars, right? And it just happens to use ancient Egypt as mythology, right? But they wouldn't let me do that. The studio wouldn't let me do that because they were shit scared of what was going on. So they chose to make us a sacrificial goat. They went, this film's going to get cancelled. We're going to throw the actors under the bus. We're going to force Proyas to issue an apology, though it went against every one of my feelings of truth to do that. But I did it because we were hitting a world which I didn't understand at all. I didn't see this coming. Right now, in 6-7 years later, I go, okay, I get what was going on there and I get the reasons for it. And now we're starting to get a shift in the narrative. But in those days, I probably wouldn't have had a hope in hell. I would have been utterly crucified and I would have been cancelled as well as the movie, So that's the simplest version I can.
No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Again, there was a startling detail in that, because I had even forgotten that you had done that movie. And then I remember the controversy and then I was reading about it. I was just going, I'm like, the dude's Egyptian. So like, what is that? I mean, it adds it adds so much to the conversation, and you just did a very good job of succinctly describing it.